Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining in for our third installment here. We're very excited. Let everybody kind of funnel in.
We did this last time. Feel free to say hi in the chat and maybe where you're from or where you're tuning in from. We know this is a busy time of year, so appreciate you guys taking time out of your day.
Yes. Get some snacks. Lunchtime on the East Coast here, where both Kim and I are.
Yep. Get the snacks, get the drinks, whatever you need to survive this preseason.
Survive in advance. So let me stop sharing for a second here. All right. Nebraska. Welcome, Dallas.
Nice. We'll get started in just a minute or two. West Coast showing up. Appreciate you guys. Awesome. Love to see some familiar names. Oh, that's good. Oh, these are
Yeah.
only going to the hosts and panelists. Can everyone see the chat?
Yeah. I think it's just some people just are they
Oh, I
want to say
see.
hi to us and
Not everyone, totally fine. But yeah, some of those East Coast schools starting a little bit later, which is nice. But I think a lot of folks, a lot of schools have already started. So here we go. We'll give everyone one more minute, I'd say, where people are still joining. You're all muted as you're making your way in here, so no rush. Grab snacks, grab drinks, and we'll dive right in.
we're at the 50 mark.
Yeah.
All right. I know we got a lot of great info today. Seems like the last two, we always feel like we're running out of time. So want to make sure that we start on time for your sake as well. My name's Britt. I'm a member of the customer experience team and fellow athletic trainer. And today we're going to be going over results interpretation. So we're going to be looking at some baseline cases, some post-injury cases, and really we're hoping for a lot of feedback from you all and providing some cases. Hopefully you've been able to look back either from previous years or some current baselines that you just tested and you have some questions. We're going to ask you to throw them in the chat and we're going to just in real time review them all together just so you feel comfortable taking a look at it. So couple housekeeping. As you all know, you're muted as you came in. We're gonna use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen there to provide any profile IDs, right? So we, from a HIPAA compliance standpoint, we're not going to show any demographics of your athletes. We're going to use the profile ID to be able to take a look on the portal. So throw those in the Q&As. And if you have any specific questions along with that, so we can take a look at all together. You also have the ability to upvote or comment on Q&As too. So if you have similar question or want to see something a little bit sooner, feel free to click the upvote in the Q&A chat. We also have the chat just for comments. We love to hear. We have a lot of veterans that are on this course. So if there's something that's specific you like to look at or you've seen work for you when you're reviewing the results, let's hear about it. We are recording this just like our first two webinars. We will post it. Our rookie first year sway webinar is posted on our main website, and we'll share links to that. And then our year 2 and beyond, where we went through our new features and just some housekeeping on how to get your system ready for the next year baseline, is on Sway University. So we'll definitely post this as well. We did not post this webinar for continuing ed credits, but you'll still receive your survey at the end of this, and we'll send another reminder this afternoon to complete the survey. And you'll be provided a statement of attendance. So you should be able to uh, put this into your BOC as category D and still claim, the hour of education that you were provided here today. All right. Without further
Awesome.
ado, Kim.
My name's Kim. I'm also part of the customer experience team. If you've been on Sway University, you've probably heard too much of my voice already. But this is the kind of layout and plan for this webinar today. We're going to do just a quick lay of the land of what the results look like, just so we can all kind of have the same starting ground. And then I'm going to share my app screen, and we're going to see what the results look like in the app, go through some baseline, maybe post-injury, and then um, we'll dive into the real, case examples in the portal. And that's where, again, you guys are going to put the profile ID. So as Britt said, don't put any, patient information in the Q&A, just use the profile ID for that athlete. It can be found directly underneath their name. And we'll hit the next slide. And sorry if there's a bit of an echo. We'll see what this audio situation on my side is going. But yeah, this graphic is basically to remind everyone that you can see results for any Sway test on the web portal and on your phone or your mobile app. Of course, they're going to look a little bit different on a computer. It's going to be a bigger screen, spread out a little different, and some different views, but we'll navigate those and kind of explain everything shortly. Next slide. And so just quick kind of lay of the land here. When you're looking at a Sway scorecard, and this is the kind of blown up view that you can see on the phone in a smaller capacity, but certainly on the web portal when you're looking at individual modules, you're going to see the average score. So that's the number in that black caret. And that is taking the average of all of the trials in that module. Next, that percentile rank bar. So that is the gray bar that is right below that. That caret, that average score is going to fall somewhere on that gray bar. And where it falls is going to tell you what percentile that individual falls. And the percentiles are based on the athlete's age and sex. So this particular one, that 281 milliseconds of reaction time, that's the average of their 2 trials. And it's falling in the 20th percentile for that age and sex. Now, you'll also see if the athlete or the profile has taken a baseline, you'll see a baseline consistency bar or dot. It really depends how wide apart the baseline trials were. So when you see green, that means they were highly consistent. There's really typically only going to be 2 trials. When you see red and yellow dots or bars, that's when there's more inconsistency between trials. And we're going to navigate all of that and go through a bunch of examples. And typically those bars, when you're looking at it in this view, are going to be a lot longer or wider because there's just more inconsistency between the trials. And last but not least, that's kind of, I think, a nuance as you start to look at these more is the score scale. So just, yeah, Britt's going to highlight kind of that or put her cursor over. You'll see the numbers for all of the modules on that score scale. Now, the key things here to remember, balance and memory are scored on a 0 to 100 scale, 100 being the best. The other modules, and we'll go through this on a case, are scored in milliseconds. So that score scale, your better percentile scores, so for reaction time, that 150, 200s, those are good reaction time scores, are going to be more towards, I guess, what is that, the right side of your screen. And on balance and memory, you're going to see the 100s and the 90s over there, and the lower percentile scores are going to be on the other side. So as you guys spend more time with these numbers and looking at these type of scorecards, those are some things that you'll pick up. When that caret, that average score is more towards the right of the screen versus the left, it's going to be easier to view if that's a good score or a bad score. So I'm going to jump in, and please, if you guys have questions at any time, pop them in the Q&A. I'm going to share my phone screen, and we're going to review a baseline test and see what it looks like on the phone. And then Britt, just interrupt me because now that I'm sharing my phone screen, I definitely can't see like I feel like anything else.
Yeah, no,
Um,
we're good.
okay. So this is Sway University's just demo code. So maybe there's a chance that you'll see your name on here if you've taken a demo test before. But this is essentially what, after you baseline a team, up top, it would maybe say the volleyball or football team, the group code underneath. I'm on the codes page of the app right here. And I love this page personally. If there's any other folks, that have done baselining, in years past, feel free to say otherwise. But this is the page I love to be on when I'm baselining a team. And as the kids create their profiles, their names will pop up here. And as they go through each module, the dots will show up in terms of what color, how consistent they are. So at the end, when the kid is done with the test, I have them come over to me and we do a checkout. So I'm going to look at Sarah's baseline. I see all green for the first four modules, which great. I'm pretty happy with that. I can look at the percentiles to see, and actually, I think I can even draw on this. Britt, do you have this little drawing thing too?
Yep.
Ooh, yeah, so you can always highlight some of that. Um, you can see those percentiles if you just scroll over slightly, but there is one module for this particular athlete that's coming up red. Now I can look at this, and if we remember, memory and balance are scored on a 0 to 100 scale, 100 being the best. So when I'm looking at these three memory scores, there's one score that is not like the others. So it's really easy in here. I can click that edit, go into edit mode, and the 82 and the 91 are definitely her better balance scores. That 64, if the athlete's in front of me, I can have that conversation. Hey, what happened with that? Did you get confused? Did you, hit it too fast or whatever the scenario? Regardless, I could take that out. Oops. And I'm a little surprised it didn't turn green there. But
It might
those
be
two.
because of the age.
Oh, yeah. Some of these profiles as are older than your high school and middle school athletes. But this is an easy view where you can edit the test right from here. Now, if I want this person to redo the memory module because I think they're, can do better than that, or their scores are still really inconsistent, this is where I can come and see that same scorecard that we just reviewed. I can see everything here in a little bit more detail because now I can see the actual trials. And we could take a look at that memory one. Just because I edited out trial one doesn't mean it's gone forever. It's just excluded from the calculation. You could see that it's grayed out there. If I wanted this athlete to redo memory for whatever reason, I would hit the, nope, I would not hit that button. I would be on her profile page. I do that all the time. I would be on her profile page, hit actions, hit create code. And I'm going to say, to this person, Sarah, I want you to redo just the memory test. Click memory only, leave it as assessment, make sure that baseline button's checked, and then hit save. And then the athlete's in front of me. I'm going to say, okay, pop this code into your phone or hit share code. They can just scan the QR code and it's going to take them directly into that memory module for them to redo. And then I can come back in, review the extra trials from memory and figure out their new baseline. So I'm going to pause.
Yep, we got one question. When you're looking at the baseline to determine whether you can delete an outlier or maybe need to redo a section, what things to think about, when to do what, and what factors may determine, okay, this is red, but I also want to retest.
Mm, that's a great question. So I think there's, probably a lot of factors that can go into it. If I know that my athlete was scoring in a high, and we can even pull up another one here. This is actually a lot of red here. If I'm seeing different percentiles, on an athlete, they're scoring in like the 90th or 80th percentiles for a bunch of modules, and then one module is a super low percentile. That might factor into why I want to redo that module if they're inconsistent on it. Um,
Yeah, and
I'm trying to think.
I
Yeah.
would say, red doesn't, I think it's a lot of people think, oh, it's red, that means it's an automatic redo. And that's not the case. You want to remember that you're creating a range, right? That baseline consistency is a range, you're creating an average. And the average score is what's going to be compared to any post injury results. So if you feel like that average is still a strong representation of your athlete and there's no one thing that happened during that session that would make you feel like they need to redo it, you're going to have athletes that have baseline, a red baseline consistency score. I definitely look at any red flags. So we have a couple modules that do show up as red. So our balance score, and actually, Kim, if you jump into one of those profiles
Oops.
and actually jump into the test, and we can show the information icon right in the top
Yes.
left.
Yeah, up here. Hold on. Let me like give it a little circle. I forget about this too, truthfully.
So this is just like a little cheater to just remind you of what all of our results kind of mean in terms of, it's a general overview, right? It's not going to tell you, oh, this person's concussed, this person needs to be retested, but tells you about the flagged results there. And so you'll see it most common on the feet together, eyes closed stance. If they score below a 90, this is generally the easiest stance. And so that will show up in a font of red if they score below 90. I always recommend, and Kim, you're probably similar, if you're seeing a red score, a flagged result in any of your modules, I do exclude it. So if that brings you down to 2 trials and those are consistent, move on. But if you have multiple flagged results and now you're down to 1 trial, you definitely want to retest because you want to have a couple trials to be able to create that average score.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would say the most common one, Britt already said this, is that feet together, eyes closed. If it's below a 90, it'll flag red. They have to do really bad on the cognitive test, like on reaction time of
1,000.
above 1,000 milliseconds for it to flag red. That's a really slow reaction time. They basically have to not be trying or not be paying attention. So it is there to flag and bring to your attention, but most likely when you're proctoring the exam and you see the kid just like wander, looking off into space, that's probably your cue that like when I check this kid's results, I'm gonna have to you know, look into this a little more. But yeah, this is a great tidbit. I forget about this too. This little info button is always going to be there for you on every single profile. Um,
Yep. Another flagged result is the working memory. So if you scroll down to that, that's the
mm,
two-parter, right? There's the 3 letters that they're provided at the beginning. Then they go through that Simon Says, and this is actually a good example. It is a flagged result. Um, where if they score below 2, meaning that they're not able to get 2 of those sequences together by memory, it's going to be flagged. And I generally see that more so that's an individual that just didn't try. That is not common. So if you're seeing that, that should be an excluded trial. I also look at, the working memory, depending on how many sequences they get together, it can take a while. So if you're seeing trial 1, they get 13, 14 in a row, and then the next 2 are like 3 or 4, it's probably because they just didn't want to go through that again. So just have a conversation with them and see what happened during that trial before deciding to exclude or retest for sure.
yeah, those are great points. Now I'm happy to go through another baseline or two, like from this code. But remember, these are all uh, these are all current customers, athletic trainers, people who use the demo code. They're not real athletes. Well, maybe some are. I shouldn't be discounting all of us, but certainly start putting profile IDs in the Q&A. Um, that way we can pull it up on the portal. But really, when you guys are in the app, this is the view I want you guys to get comfortable with, and being able to decide, should I have them redo or edit a test? And I see, Rebecca, that's a question in the chat right now. Do you suggest having them redo a section if omitting the outlying score does not move into the green? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an option. And again, it's always going to depend on, what your time and kind of resources are. Like if you guys are pinched for time on a schedule, you might not have time to review the results in the moment. It might be you reviewing them, later that day and then pulling kids the next day at practice to redo a particular module. Ideally, it can get done the same day. That way it's, not something you have to worry about finding people after. Um, but,
Yep.
yeah, good.
I was gonna say, and remembering that if you do retest either a certain section or multiple sections, this is going to show up as another test, right? It's a new timestamp. You either provided a code or had them test on your device. So it's going to show up under the test overview as a second test. But when you go to the baselines tab, and if you jump into one of these profiles, Kim, and show that baseline tab, again, this is the overview, and you can see the baseline count. That's all the trials that are being included in the baseline average, normative data, and the normative data and the baseline consistency, right? So you may review and you may have two tests now for two total tests, 5 trials for balance, but you really want to exclude a low outlier from test one, a low outlier from test two to hone in on that those ranges.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions on the app view? And Bert, anything else we're missing here? I feel like this is
Um,
kind of the
yeah,
go-to.
I would just show our new features with the sorting and showing the red and incomplete test. So if you didn't know, we just released actually another app version 6.0.4. So make sure you all are using that version right now to get the latest full features. But we do have this new two new features on the code page specifically, both in the portal and in your app, where you can sort by last name on all the names that fall under that code. And you can also filter by showing only incomplete tests and red inconsistency scores. Just at the top
Now,
there, you
mind
can click that.
Yeah. Now, mind you, this code has hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
over 700 profiles on it. So this is another actually just good example of why we recommend creating new codes every year instead of reusing the same code year after year, because it just slows things down a bit. And I like a fresh code because then it's only the athletes that are directly in front of me that are populating on this page versus having to scroll through previous athletes.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to stop that and pull up my portal. I spoke to a couple customers this week, and I did save a good injury profile or, profile to go over. So I can pull that up, but certainly want you guys to start putting in your profile IDs and let's talk about it. But I'll pull up
I
one to get things
Yep.
going.
And we have one from form submission to baseline.
Oh, nice. Get this one going. And then there is a question in the chat, 6.0.4 or .3. It is 4.
Yep.
Well, I can't remember when that came out. Britt,
It came out on Friday. So
there you go.
yep.
6. 3. Okay. Let's get this profile up for you guys and that way also you guys will be able to see just how everything is, de-identified on our side. You're only going to see a profile ID number. This is not, no patient information will be on here. And again, I lost the chat Q&A, but Britt,
Yeah, you're good.
obviously jump in. So This is clearly a post-injury test. I know that because this orange bar here is signifying that this profile is in an event. So I can click the event. I can see some information here. This is awesome, about what happened, when the injury start date was, lacrosse ball to the back of the head, physician clearance notes. Like this is a great, just kind of documentation situation here. Um, but no matter what, even if, you baseline the kids like during this time and the injury's happening months later, whatever the scenario, I always like to review the baseline before diving into the post injury. The kid can take the post injury test at, and this is a question we get often. Some folks, will do it on the sideline if that's the scenario, like you need that data in. Very common also is within that first 24 to 48 hours, depending on how symptomatic the athlete is. You're not going to put them through a full assessment if they're reporting really high symptoms or having a lot of issues. You'll prioritize um, that rest in that first 24 to 48 hours. But during that time, you could administer a screen, which is just a short one trial of each module. Regardless, that's something for you guys with your staff to discuss at your individual schools of what, if you want to standardize the exact return to play protocol. But no matter what, as before I went down that rabbit hole, is you're going to review the baseline before you dive into the post injury. I want to make sure that those baseline results are, strong. And I kind of know in the back of my head what I expect in the post injury. Do I expect the kid to be returning to baseline? Did they bomb their balance test during preseason and I didn't get a chance to re-baseline them? And I might expect they might outperform their baseline. There's a million different scenarios. Okay, so this kid's balance test looks pretty good. An 84 out of 100 puts them in the 63rd percentile for their age and sex. And again, now you guys can see this breakdown. All 5 stances, you see the numbers. The 86, like the composite score for the trial, is just an average of all 5 stances. And then the 84 is an average of trial 1 and trial 2 combined. Okay. Now, inspection time, I'm seeing yellow. It's a little bit inconsistent between the 2 trials, 17th percentile for their age and sex. Now, knowing that this kid is in a post-injury, the average is 94. So I would definitely hope for them to be around that, but even potentially a little bit higher. I know at some point in time, they scored a 68 milliseconds on inspection time. This is the t-test. So already in my head, I'm, kind of prepping of what I might expect in the post-injury. And Britt, jump in if you have any other comments. Now, reaction time and impulse control, these two I always like to look at together. They're very consistent in terms of their baseline consistency. So 85th percentile looks really good. And then impulse control, not too bad, a little bit lower percentile. We usually see between these two anywhere between 100 and 150 millisecond difference. So right on target there in terms of that split, maybe a little bit over. If you think about the nature of these 2 tests, reaction time, that screen turns orange, boom, you got to move it. Impulse control is that green check, red X. So your brain has to make a decision and then you decide to move or not move the phone. So inherently, reaction time should always be faster than impulse control. And last but not least, memory. Trial 2 was taken out. That was an example of where they probably went too fast or whether they gave up on that trial 2, but trials 1 and 3 are very consistent. So quick rundown of the baseline. You're not going to have to, it's not going to take you that long when you guys are scanning it, but at least you know kind of what your next steps are. I love this test history view. You can see this on the phone and on the computer. Obviously on the computer, it's a bit more spread out. But this is going to show you the change from baseline. And whether it goes up or down, we have these percentages broken here, and it's a percent change from their baseline. And I like, again, the event feature because now all of those post-injury tests are kind of bracketed in that event period. And some days you might have symptom-only codes, which is great. This particular athlete didn't have too many symptoms. So certainly they're relying on some of the sway data also maybe a VOMS, you're doing ocular motor testing, you're doing aerobic testing as well. Because at the end of the day, the sway data is only a piece of the puzzle. From a concussion standpoint, you need to look at the whole picture. And on some of these, they already outperformed their baseline even pretty soon after the injury. Not pretty soon. The injury was on the 12th, and then they didn't test till, almost a week or two later. But some modules were down, and then the following day, they still had difficulty, you know, reaching or getting those modules back to baseline. So this is a pretty common question that we will get in terms of if everything else clears, they're clearing everything else, but they can't pass one module. What do I do? What are the next steps? This is a scenario where you can certainly serial test them on a module or two, and you can see where that plateau is. If they keep hitting, roughly the same numbers, and we will talk about reliable change a little bit later on. We have some reliable change numbers that will help you see if the change between you know the the score today and the score tomorrow, is that change even meaningful, or is it just like the natural fluctuation like of the human body? Okay. So yeah, that's kind of I think a overall example. Ideally, we have like one more, final post injury. That's a complete post injury test that we like to call it the clearance test. That looks like a full assessment, direct comparison to baseline, and hopefully they're passing all modules. They clear all the other aspects of a concussion exam. And I think the piece, especially if they're not passing a particular module, you can always add a note. So this might be a scenario where I type something out of, in discussion with team physician, patient has cleared, all other aspects of the exam. We've established a new reaction time or a new, sway baseline for this athlete. They are being cleared to play as of this date, whatever your documentation may be. I'll pause for questions. I see some notifications in the chat and Q&A. So we'll
Yeah,
pause.
so one of the questions actually has to do with this. Probably happens more so when you're providing codes, whether group codes and baselining, about merging profiles. And that definitely is going to happen if they don't match their first name, last name, and date of birth, what they had previously. So making sure that one, just when you're giving that instruction with them, to remind them to use their full name, double check their date of birth, and especially that date of birth, because that's how the normative data is being pulled from. So really want to make sure that's uh, an accurate number in there. And then if you're still, they still have the two profiles you have, there's actually two options now in the portal. So Ken's going to pull that up. That's his
Yep.
getting logged out there. So we have the possible duplicates report, which now pulls if 2 out of the 3 of the fields, first name, last name, and date of birth match, it's going to create this report for you. And right here, you can quickly just review the first name, last name, and date of birth. And if you do confirm that this is the same person, you just click merge right there in the report. So really easy way to audit your system essentially and merge and clean things up. Now, if you have twins, they're always going to show up on this. They have the same last name and same date of birth. So there are going to be cases where you're not going to merge under this report. And then, we also have the merge profiles tool underneath that. So if you have one person, you have the IDs of the profile you want to keep. So the one that has the correct demographics, and then you take the profile ID of the one you want to lose and just clean it up that way as well.
Awesome. And Sue had a great question. Can you add a note for a baseline? You can add a note to any sway test. And adding the note, you could do that on the computer or the phone. Because what's pretty common, what I'll do, at least when I'm helping out with baselines, especially because I'm not, I don't know every individual athlete when I'm just going to visit a school, I'll pop a note onto the baseline and say, like, kid had their eyes open even after I told them to have their eyes closed. Or like make a note on the baseline if there were any, issues during testing or, phone died in the middle of it, or whatever the scenario, you can certainly write notes on the baseline. Or even, kid had an ankle sprain, kid was recovering from an ACL, so balance scores may be lower than what you would expect.
Yep. And in terms of serial testing, right? That's the one great. There's a lot of great things about Swipe, but right, you have unlimited testing. So I encourage you guys. We encourage you to test as you need objective measures. And if you're serial testing and you're using those reliable change indices and seeing that that change over test from test is not significant based on those standards, and your other clinical findings are deeming that this athlete is ready to go, you can actually adjust the baseline, right? You have the ability to flip a test to a baseline. Right now, you can do that in the app. So if you click on the test and you click actions, you can say add to baseline or remove to baseline and make that baseline test, or that last final test, be the new baseline and the new kind of measure for that athlete to hit.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Because a lot of folks will end up taking, especially if they're outperforming their original baseline, they'll take that final post-injury and make that the new baseline. Or in an ideal world, like 4 to 6 weeks after the injury, when, knock on wood, they're physiologically healed, because we never actually know. Um, then you do another baseline and you get like a real fresh, like away from the injury baseline. But if we all had all that time in the world, that'd be amazing. This is a quick view of that normative data cheat sheet. We can either send the link or pop the link in the chat, or this is something we could send via email to all the folks that have attended this. Some of you might already have this, but this is where that reliable change will come into play. So seeing the plateau. If we're using balance, for example, if your score, what this means is if your score, if hopefully you could see my cursor highlighting this, it says plus or minus 9.73. So if my balance score, my MBEST, and this is the composite score, so that total score, if it goes up or down by 9.73 points, that's meaningful. So if my balance score only fluctuates by 3 points, it goes from an 80 to an 83, that's not meaningful change. Now, if I go from an 80 to a 90, that's meaningful change. Okay. Or the inverse, if I go from an 80 to a 70, that's meaningful change. Okay. All
Awesome.
right.
We have another profile ID here.
Is that from Dallas in the chat? That's what I just
Yep.
copied. Awesome. Okay. Let's take a look. Yeah, close out
Taking
some
a
of
look.
these
They're
so I don't
seeing
get.
that. So about this event. So it looks like the event maybe shouldn't be there. So somehow that whenever you see that orange banner, it means so this might have been not a closed event. So that might
Mhm.
be what it is, Dallas. So an event might have been created at the time of the injury, but then it was just left open. So some of you might notice that when you log into your portal or into your app just from last year. That's definitely just to close out the old year. Go through, review those open events from last year, fill out any notes that you need to kind of close that out and put that end date in there, and that will remove the orange banner from the profile.
Yeah. And Dallas, if you're on right now, and you happen to close this event, I can hit refresh and we'll see the event be closed. So like all this happens in real time. If you're collaborating with other healthcare providers, um, you know, you could be doing something, you can close the event on your phone or on the computer. And then if I'm the, I don't know, physician or someone sitting in an office, however many miles away, I can see all of this stuff happen as well. Because yeah, it certainly looks like this baseline that was just taken 2 days ago probably does not belong in an event. Let me hit a little
Dallas,
refresh. Well, let's see. Oh, we got to
yeah,
close
it's
it
not.
before before that 8/11 date. So here, let me just pop it on 8/10. Now that orange banner will be not along that. Awesome.
Yep.
So
And
yeah,
now it won't. Yep, it won't show up on the dashboard for you either. anymore. So that's good.
Nice.
Um,
So yeah.
Perfect.
And then here's
Yeah.
something I saw Sue, we'll get to Sue's ID.
Yep.
Something in these scenarios where you know a kid had an event or had a concussion in the past, those are the baselines that I like to actually try to take a little bit of time to review. Because we get the question all the time, like, I have 500 athletes. I can't go through every single baseline. And I don't think anyone would expect you to, but I would definitely want to look at the baselines of my high contact sports, my kids that have had a concussion in the past. I want to make sure that their new baselines are, as strong and as reliable as possible. And then I always kind of make the joke, but if I have any kids that are just like in the training room all the time because they're getting hurt for whatever reason, or they have parents that are a little bit of a headache, I might want to make sure they have extra, a good baseline in the event that we have to manage that type of injury after. So this profile, I would definitely want to like make sure the baseline's real good. So it's consistent balance, but pretty low percentile. So, Dallas, if this was your starting wide receiver, I would maybe have concerns that they're in the 17th percentile. But if this is an incoming freshman that doesn't know how to move or control their body, this is probably, a reflection of their balance. Um, some of these scores are definitely in low percentiles, but they're consistent. So again, this is a reason why we do baselines. This is where this kid falls in relation to their peers, but they're very consistent between their trials. It's pretty hard to purposely do poorly in the same exact fashion on these modules. So, and then good call on editing out that trial one. Yeah, overall, this looks to me, and Britt say otherwise, but this to me looks like a good baseline for this kid's abilities.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right. I saw Sue pop in another one, and feel free to keep the IDs coming. Oh, look at the time. Time literally goes so fast. We only have like 15 minutes left, but we can definitely fly through more of these. Um, okay,
So she's saying it wasn't able to end the event.
interesting. Oh, definitely an interesting scenario. Student
So
has a
that would,
history of Tourette's and his tics influence the test. So this seems like it's more of a note versus an event. So Sue, I would just go in probably and copy and paste that out, delete the event, and just pop that. You would ask this question, but yeah, I would pop this on the baseline and just comment that it affected the test for sure. And I would close the event because that's not necessarily an event. When we say event, that basically means injury.
yep.
But yeah, great scenario. Oh yeah. Okay.
Definitely if you're, now that this is the baselining time and you're having athletes that come in, maybe they are already injured, they have a ankle sprain and you're looking to do the sports plus or things like that. You can provide just the cognitive section of the test and then have them test, when they're healthy. I think that's a big thing to remember, right? You want them to be
Mhm.
testing at their normal state. So, there may
Yeah,
be scenarios where you delay testing for a bit.
that's a great point. So yeah, we'll just run through this baseline pretty quick. So off the, first off the cuff, balance looks great, very consistent. And again, we said this in some of our other webinars, but we do recommend in-person testing. Um, of course, you could send a code home or you can send the code wherever, but certainly for baselines, we want to make sure their feet are in the correct position, their eyes are actually closed. Um, but this athlete in particular had very good and consistent balance, 91st percentile for their age and sex. And I didn't mention this, but you'll always see in this upper right-hand corner the language that the test was taken in. So sway tests can be taken in English, Spanish, or French, and you can instruct the athletes on how to change that. And we have some articles on that in our help center. Inspection time, very consistent. 43 is the average of these two trials. Reaction time looks great, very consistent. And then here's a red. We're getting some red. So now this is a great example because what happens is it looks like trial two is the outlier. But if we take a look at this score scale, this 385, that's their best trial. So I don't want to take that out. Trials one and three are what are dragging this score down into such a low percentile and also making it very inconsistent. So this is a red, it's coming up red. This is one where I would have them redo impulse control. And you can gauge like what you would want them to score based on reaction time. This kid was in the 22nd percentile for reaction time. They got 290 seconds. I would expect them to be around 390 for impulse control. And that's where their best trial was. Now, will they hit that over all three trials? We don't know, but I would definitely want to redo impulse control to get more data. And then more likely than not, I'm going to edit out trials one and three. I'll have new impulse control trials that hopefully are more consistent with this 385, 390. But yeah, this is a great example. And then boom. And everything else is so consistent. Like they did really great on all the other modules. They just got to redo impulse control.
Yep.
Great.
We have a question about a cross country athlete that has a prosthetic leg. So in terms of baselining, should you just run with the no pun intended there, with the results that you get or retest? And I think with somebody that has, you know, a a a certain condition and you're baselining, it's not a bad thing to get another retest just to get more data, because you're not going to necessarily use the normative data for that athlete. You really want a strong baseline to use to compare their post injury results for them. And definitely, if they're using their prosthetic leg for the sport that they're doing, make sure that you're testing, both sides, both limbs, single leg, because that's going to be important to get baselining results for. Definitely.
Yeah, great question.
And then the EMR integration. So if you're integrated with the EMR, those PDFs are automatically being pulled or pushed over to your EMR. So if you make changes, let's say you're going back and you're adding notes into that PDF, it will not automatically push again to your EMR. So you'll want to manually create a PDF in that case and upload it to your EMR so you have, the most accurate and uh, up-to-date version of that PDF.
Yep. All right, we got another baseline to run through. So we're looking at balance. When you see yellow, we get this question a lot, like, it's not green, it's not red, like, what should I do here? Uh, Again, this I think comes down to you guys knowing your athlete. And, if this is my like starting wide receiver, starting quarterback, whatever, and I don't think they're a 28th percentile athlete, some of these scores, are pretty low. But maybe this kid has an injury with their right leg. They scored really low on single leg, eyes closed right. So this could be just, where they are for today. Uh, oh, wait, is this the profile we're on? I think we got a comment on it. Oh, not yet. So that's kind of the story with yellow. It's going to be a give or take whether you want more data points to get a better average. Inspection time, same thing. This is pretty, decently spread out. 85 is here, a 136 is off the charts low. So again, make that call if this kid is actually in the 10th percentile or you want to retest. And definitely this profile struggled a bit on multiple modules. So that's something to, kind of take into consideration here. Reaction time, all three trials are all three different, are three different scores here. So whoever profile this is, I want to just go into edit mode just to see what it does. And you can always do this on the app or, realistically, you might be on the app in real time to do this, right? You take it away. If it makes the percentile and the average a little bit better, it turns it green, 88th percentile. They don't need to redo that module. I'm happy with that. Now, impulse control, both of these scores, if I kind of see where they are, right? 535 is off the charts low. 464 is still off the charts low. So, and I know how well they did on reaction time, how well they could do. Impulse control, even though it's yellow, might be something that I have them redo. And then the memory test, I'm just going to scroll back up. Honestly, right now it's easier to edit in the app, but hopefully a change coming soon where you could just stay in edit mode. These zeros are what is bringing that memory score down. Now it's still going to stay red because I only have one trial now of memory to go off of. Okay.
Yep,
We flew through that
exactly.
fast, and we're living in the chat right now. So I want to make, I don't know if I'm missing
Yeah.
questions here or whatnot.
No, you're good. You're good. There, I sent in another profile there, definitely looking at the how there was a retest. So
Oh
go
yeah.
ahead and throw that profile ID in there so we can see how it's still going to show up red until you start excluding certain trials.
Mm,
It doesn't automatically exclude the previous test when you retest a section unless that section is 6 months or older. So you'll notice they will automatically exclude older baselines that are 6 months or older, but not
but
when you're kind of testing back to back.
I put in the wrong profile ID. I would have just put the one I was just in. Oops.
That's all right. And then another question about it was one of the profiles we were looking at asking about there was a large change in the result, but it wasn't flagged. So our reliable change is not in the app currently. So any change, like especially if you were talking about post-injury results, that's based on percent change from the average scores from each module. So you need to look into the document that we'll share out to see those different confidence intervals to see, what actually is the ranges for significant change. It will be in the app soon, but not right now.
Yeah. And then Rebecca, I see you put a question in for one trial on that memory. It was one trial because I edited out trials 1 and 3. So that's why there was only one left. And only one, if there's only one trial, it's automatically going to be red because there's no other trials to compare the consistency to. So hopefully that answers that. But yeah, this is a great example, right, of when there's a redo, even if it's just a couple minutes apart, it's still going to show up as two separate timestamps. I'm assuming they redid balance because this first round of balance is pretty rough. So definitely, I know I'm going to take out trial 1. Trial 2 is not much better. And trial 3, it's a better score, but we're getting that flagged result on feet together, eyes closed. It's the easiest of the stances. They should be able to get over a 90. So before we make any decisions on taking trials out, let's at least just look at the redo. This looks like a much better balance score. Not flagging on feet together, eyes closed, and much better scores for balance. So this is where you got to come in. It's still showing up red because now it's taking into account all 5 trials of this. So we just got to edit these guys, and we're going to see that bar get a lot smaller and turn green. And there it is. So these trials are now excluded from the baseline. They're still there. You can see that. But now this is definitely a better reflection of what their scores are, what their balance is. And then, even on this one, this is a great baseline to even look at. Scroll down here. This inspection time, right? 68 and 17 are much better scores. It might not pop it green. This 136 is off the charts low. So I'm going to take that one out. We'll see if it helps. Oh, wait, where'd it go? So it came up red, but a much better percentile. That 43 is probably a better reflection of their inspection time abilities. And again, if this is a kid that's had a history of concussion or any of these situations, maybe I want some more data points, or you're okay with this average, but I do know that they can perform pretty well on this. And then reaction time impulse control, very consistent, good percentiles. You see that 232, 339, that kind of 100, 150 millisecond split. Looks nice. And then a great consistent memory. So good baseline. Running through that. I'll pause for questions. I see lots of things coming in in the chat.
Yeah, it's just one of the profiles that we looked at previously with the one with the memory. So I'll throw
Mhm.
that in here. Um it's showing that it still has two trials included, even though we had both um excluded. Two out of the three were excluded. Not sure if that's saved though on your end.
Let's see. I don't think this is the right one. Oh, I literally just copy and pasted the wrong thing. So don't mind me, guys.
Yeah, any other questions here? We're kind of wrapping up, but you can always reach out to support@swaymedical.com if you have specific questions about a case. We're happy to review them as needed. I think we'll definitely end up going and scheduling another one, maybe in October or so, to look at more post-injury results. So, oh yeah, refresh
There we go. We got the
the key,
refresh.
the key refresh. Perfect.
Nice. Let's see. Wait, did I do this one? The one ending in 341? I think I did that one. I
Yes,
would
you
say we
did.
have time for one more if anyone wants to toss one in there. And someone's raising their hand. Nicole, I see you with a raised hand. If you're able to, I don't think on a webinar we can can we unmute people? I don't know if that's a thing.
No, unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah. So Nicole, if you can type out your question. But kind of key takeaways on results interpretation, memory and balance scored on that 0 to 100 scale. All the other scores are in milliseconds. Um, Red does not mean bad. It just means inconsistency between trials. I'm trying to think of any other, key takeaways. Create your events, right? When an injury happens, create an event. It makes it so much easier to manage those athletes. When you're on your dashboard, those events pop right up there. I can easily click into a profile and test them super easy. So this is just a demo profile, don't worry.
Awesome.
Nicole, still waiting for you. We want to answer your question, but if
Maybe
you're,
she was just saying
yeah,
goodbye.
or I was going to say not able to type. Same thing. If there's any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. But yeah, this was yeah, love spending time with you guys. This was great. Busy time of year. Never hesitate to reach out. As Britt said, you can always email a profile ID to support@Sway Medical if it's not like an urgent matter. We can, look it over and email you back with some thoughts or follow-up questions. And I am thinking that we'll probably do another one of these, like maybe mid-October, and there'll probably be some more post-injury cases we can run through. So certainly spread the word, and if that happens, then we'll get it up on the website for you guys to sign up. Awesome. Oh, a good one. A webinar
Oh,
going over
yeah.
an event and return to play. Yep.
Yep.
Great. That's essentially, I think, what that October one will be, right? Like, I'm hoping that we'll have some really good, like, real post-injury cases to run through, because every concussion is different. I alluded to it earlier when we were talking about, like, when should I administer sway tests in the post-injury phase, and it really just depends on the athlete, the severity of their symptoms, so many factors. It could happen at an away game. You don't even hear about the concussion until a week later because they've skipped school all week. Like, there's so many different scenarios of how concussions and return to play can present. Obviously, we can present an ideal case where you're on the sidelines, you administer an on-field assessment, you give the parent a symptom-only code, Um, and they report symptoms for the first 24, 48 hours. And then at the 48-hour mark, you do an assessment, and you can have the ideal scenario, but in real life, we know that doesn't always happen.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's top of the hour. Hopefully everyone got a little lunch in, or if this was your lunch break, thanks for spending it with us. And we'll see you out there.
See everybody.